it's like, it's cool because I can do other things with them.
Well, baby, Eminem, like that song go in. Tell them what you like. Tell them what you be, baby.
I'll be straight. One Grammy I have is for Crack a Bottle. I couldn't even have that without him. You know, and that's why I have so much value for.
Suge Knight showed up with the crew of Mexicans.
Yeah, and I was there with the homies.
Eminem was there. Eminem was ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
In the year 2000, Will Smith was Hollywood's golden boy, clean, charming, and untouchable. Every movie was a hit, every album went platinum, and parents loved him as the family-friendly face of rap. No profanity, no scandals, no street drama, just smiles, Grammys, and blockbuster fame. But in Detroit, another story was rising. A bleach blonde firestarter named Eminem had just crashed into the mainstream, loud, raw, and unapologetic. So, when Will stood on the Grammy stage, proudly declaring that rap didn't need curses to win, fans clapped, but to Eminem, it was a shot fired. That moment didn't just spark a feud, it exposed the clash between Hollywood's clean image and hip-hop's brutal reality, and it left one burning question: what would have happened if Will Smith ever tried to test Eminem face to face? By the late 90s, Will Smith wasn't just another rapper, he was the rap industry's exception to the rule. While the genre was often criticized for violence and profanity, Will was selling millions without ever dropping a curse word. His 1997 album Big Willie Style moved over 10 million copies worldwide, and his follow-up Willennium kept the momentum going. On top of that, he was headlining blockbuster films like Independence Day and Men in Black. To the industry, Will was proof that rap could go mainstream without the chaos of the streets. But in February 2000, during the 42nd annual Grammy Awards, Will took his polished image one step further. Standing proudly on stage, he declared, "I've never used profanity in my records. Rap doesn't need curses to win." The crowd erupted in cheers, parents at home smiled, and critics praised him for keeping the genre clean. On the surface, it seemed harmless, yet not everyone was clapping, because to artists who built their careers by pouring raw, unfiltered truth into their lyrics, Will's words sounded less like a personal choice and more like a backhanded jab. And to one rising rapper out of Detroit, a hungry, chaotic force named Marshall Mathers, those words felt like a direct attack. For Eminem, this wasn't just about a comment on profanity, it was about respect, survival, and who really had the right to speak for hip-hop. That Grammy stage moment lit a fuse, and Eminem wasn't about to let it slide. While Will Smith was polishing his image in Hollywood, Eminem's world couldn't have been more different. Detroit in the late 90s wasn't red carpets and studio lights. It was battles in grimy clubs, empty pockets, and a constant fight for survival. Marshall Mathers didn't come into the game smiling. He came in swinging. By 1999, the Slim Shady LP had exploded onto the scene, a chaotic mix of dark humor, addiction-fueled storytelling, and violent imagery that America had never seen from a white rapper. To many, it felt dangerous. To Eminem, it was simply his reality. Eminem wasn't trying to be clean, polished, or parent-approved. He thrived on shock value, spitting verses about poverty, broken homes, and rage. His alter ego, Slim Shady, became a symbol of everything society wanted to censor: wild, unpredictable, and brutally honest. Where Will Smith represented safety, Eminem represented chaos. And chaos was selling. So when he heard Will's Grammy comment, "Rap doesn't need curses to win," it wasn't just noise in the background. To Eminem, it sounded like the industry's golden boy taking aim at rappers like him, the ones who had to bleed on their tracks to be heard. It wasn't just about swearing, it was about credibility, authenticity, and who got to define the rules of hip-hop. Eminem felt cornered, and when he felt cornered, he didn't stay quiet. That same year, Eminem was already battling lawsuits, facing public outrage, and dodging censorship left and right. His answer came in the form of the Marshall Mathers LP, one of the rawest, most controversial rap albums in history. And right in the middle of his breakout single The Real Slim Shady, he fired off a line that would echo for decades. "Will Smith don't gotta cuss in his raps to sell records. Well, I do. So fuff him and F you too." Eminem wasn't just responding to Will, he was declaring to the world that he wasn't here to play by Hollywood's rules. The line was more than a diss, it was a warning shot, a statement that Eminem wasn't afraid to take on America's favorite superstar, and he wasn't afraid of the consequence. In that moment, the divide was clear. Will Smith was the polished face of mainstream hip-hop, while Eminem was the raw, unpredictable storm the industry couldn't control. And for millions of fans, that rawness wasn't just entertaining, it was real. Will Smith's polished persona. While Eminem was shaking the music world with chaos, Will Smith was playing a completely different game. By the year 2000, he wasn't just a rapper, he was a full-blown superstar. His career had transformed him into something bigger than hip-hop, a household name that parents trusted, kids adored, and studios relied on to deliver blockbuster after blockbuster. Movies like Independence Day, Men in Black, and Enemy of the State had cemented his place in Hollywood, and when he wasn't dominating the box office, his clean, upbeat rap tracks kept him firmly in the spotlight. Unlike most rappers of his era, Will never built his brand on controversy. He stayed away from street beefs, explicit lyrics, or violent themes. Instead, he leaned into charisma, humor, and feel-good energy. To critics, this made him safe, but to millions of fans worldwide, it made him unstoppable. He was proof that you could win at the highest level without ever stepping into the mud. This polished image wasn't accidental, it was carefully built. Will understood that he wasn't just selling music or movies. He was selling himself as the perfect star, a star who could rap, act, charm, and still be welcomed into living rooms across America without a second thought. And that brand was powerful. So powerful that when he made his statement at the Grammys about keeping rap clean, it carried weight. It wasn't just one man's opinion, it was Hollywood's golden boy drawing a line in the sand. But while fans and families cheered, the underground didn't see it the same way. To them, Will's polished persona wasn't just different, it felt like a dismissal of the raw voices that hip-hop had been built on. And standing at the front of that pushback was Eminem, who was more than ready to fire back. When Eminem dropped The Real Slim Shady in 2000, his jab at Will Smith instantly lit up the industry. Fans debated whether it was playful, petty, or downright disrespectful, but one thing was clear: Eminem had just dragged Hollywood's cleanest superstar into the mud. The line spread everywhere: radio, magazines, MTV, and suddenly the rap world was buzzing with a feud no one expected. Will Smith didn't jump into a lyrical war. Instead, he doubled down on his clean image, keeping his music curse-free and his interviews positive. To some, that silence looked classy. To others, it looked weak, as if Eminem had exposed the gap between authenticity and performance. Meanwhile, award shows, even casual comments reminded everyone that he wasn't backing down. His defiance only made fans more curious. Would Will ever clap back, or would he let Eminem define the narrative? The clash wasn't just two rappers trading shots, it became a cultural conversation: raw versus polished, rebellious versus face. And in that tension, both men's legacies were being reshaped in real time. What most fans didn't realize was that this wasn't just about music. Behind the scenes, Will Smith had powerful protection. Hollywood studios, record executives, and corporate sponsors had invested millions into his clean, family-friendly brand. He wasn't just an artist, he was an empire, and empires don't crumble easily. When Eminem took shots, the industry didn't just watch. Insiders say there was quiet pressure to keep the feud from going too far. No one wanted their bankable superstar dragged into a back and forth that could damage his global image. Will's persona was too valuable, too polished to risk getting stained by raw controversy. But there was another layer of protection too. Rumors have long suggested that Will didn't even need to respond because he had a different kind of armor: his spotless reputation. Parents trusted him, Hollywood adored him, entire networks bent over backward to keep his image untouchable. So while Eminem thrived on chaos, Will's shield was silence. And, in some ways, that silence hurt Eminem more than any diss track could. Yet beneath the surface, this so-called protection created a new tension. Fans began asking, was Will really above the fight, or was he simply insulated by the system? And if the protection ever slipped, how would he hold up in a real clash outside of Hollywood's safety net? What most fans didn't realize was that this wasn't just about music. Behind the scenes, Will Smith had powerful protection. Hollywood studios, record executives, and corporate sponsors had invested millions into his clean, family-friendly brand. He wasn't just an artist, he was an empire. And empires don't crumble easily. When Eminem took shots, the industry didn't just watch. Insiders say there was quiet pressure to keep the feud from going too far. No one wanted their bankable superstar dragged into a back and forth that could damage his global image. Will's persona was too valuable, too polished to risk getting stained by raw controversy. But there was another layer of protection too. Rumors have long suggested that Will didn't even need to respond because he had a different kind of armor. His spotless reputation. Parents trusted him, Hollywood adored him, so while Eminem thrived on chaos, Will's shield was silence. And, in some ways, that silence hurt Eminem more than any diss track could. Yet beneath the surface, this so-called protection created a new tension. Fans began asking, was Will really above the fight, or was he simply insulated by the system? And, if the protection ever slipped, how would he hold up in a real clash outside of Hollywood's safety net? As the feud buzzed louder in hip-hop circles, something strange happened in Hollywood. Silence. Major outlets covered Eminem's jab, but the bigger entertainment machine barely let it breathe. Talk shows, magazines, and award shows gave it a passing glance, then quickly moved on. For Will Smith, this was no accident. Hollywood had built him into a billion-dollar face, and controversy was bad for business. Behind the scenes, executives and PR teams knew exactly how to handle storms like this. Don't fuel them. Will didn't fire back, didn't rant in interviews, didn't even wink at the drama. He simply carried on, shooting movies, promoting family-friendly projects, and flashing the same effortless smile. The silence worked like a strategy. By refusing to acknowledge Eminem's attack, Will made the feud look one-sided, almost as if he was too big to bother. But that silence had two very different effects. For casual fans, it reinforced the image of Will as the unshakable golden boy. It sparked doubt. Was Will ignoring the shots because he was truly above them, or because he couldn't afford to risk exposing cracks in his image? Eminem's raw defiance made him feel real. Will's silence, for some, made him feel manufactured. And in the long run, that Hollywood silence didn't erase the feud, it froze it in time. The moment became less about bars and more about perception. One man protected by an empire, the other clawing his way through chaos to prove nothing could silence him. Lingering tension. Even years after the Grammy jab, the shadow of the feud never completely faded. Every time Eminem dropped a new album, fans dissected his lyrics, searching for hidden shots at Will Smith. Sometimes they found them, sometimes they didn't, but the possibility alone kept the tension alive. For Eminem, it wasn't about hating Will personally, it was about everything Will represent. Clean, controlled, Hollywood-approved success stood in direct opposition to the chaos and authenticity that fueled Eminem's rise. On Will's side, the silence only deepened the mystery. He never fired back, never slipped in a sly lyric, never even hinted at Eminem's name in his music. And yet, the absence of response became its own statement. It suggested that Will wasn't interested in playing Eminem's game, or worse, that he couldn't. Fans argued endlessly, was this restraint or avoidance? What made the tension linger was that both men thrived in their own worlds. Eminem continued dominating rap with unapologetic honesty, while Will conquered Hollywood with blockbuster films and family-friendly charisma. But in the culture's memory, their clash wasn't resolved, it just lingered, like unfinished business. And over time, that unfinished energy turned into legend. Whenever fans debated what-if scenarios, who would win in a real lyrical war, or what might happen if Will ever snapped back, the conversation reignited. It didn't matter that the feud never escalated. The tension stayed alive precisely because it didn't. Full circle and reflection. Looking back, what makes the Eminem and Will Smith feud so fascinating isn't who won or lost. It's how differently they chose to play the game. Eminem turned chaos into fuel, proving that raw honesty and fearless confrontation could push him to the top of hip-hop. Will Smith, on the other hand, built his legacy on silence, choosing to let his polished image and massive career speak louder than any diss track ever could. Two completely opposite strategies, yet both worked in their own way. In the years since, the culture has shifted. Will has faced very public challenges, from family controversies to viral headlines that cracked the perfect image Hollywood worked so hard to protect. And in those moments, fans couldn't help but look back to Eminem's words, wondering if he had seen through the facade long before anyone else dared to say it. At the same time, Eminem's career has weathered storms of its own, battles with addiction, criticism of his lyrical extremes, and the question of whether he could evolve in a changing industry. Yet his willingness to confront everything head-on has kept him respected as one of rap's rawest voices. In a strange way, their feud feels like it came full circle. What began as a clash between two completely different worlds, Hollywood polish versus hip-hop grit, ended up revealing that both paths carry their own battles, and the lingering lesson is clear. Silence can protect you for a while, but truth has a way of echoing through time. Eminem, Will Smith, and the question that still remains. The clash between Eminem and Will Smith was never about a single Grammy moment. It was about two men embodying two completely different worlds. One unfiltered and unapologetic, the other carefully crafted and Hollywood approved. And that's why their feud still lingers in pop culture's memory. Eminem's sharp words pulled back the curtain, while Will's silence built a wall of mystery. Even today, fans debate, did Will's silence prove he was above it all, or did it expose a weakness in the image Hollywood created for him? And did Eminem's unrelenting honesty make him the voice of truth, or simply the loudest rebel in the room? What's undeniable is how much this rivalry reflected a bigger question: do we value the polished perfection of Hollywood, or the raw chaos of real life? That's a debate still worth having. So what do you think? Was Eminem right to call Will out? Or did Will play the smarter game by staying silent? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to see where you stand. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into the untold stories of Hollywood and hip-hop.